Good morning. This is Kay Rivers, and this is my sermon. Does the Old Testament apply to me? Does the Old Testament apply to me? It is clear from the class teaching on the Old Testament that it is impossible to completely understand the teachings of Paul or understand the book of Hebrews and many other things in the New Testament without studying the Old Testament. Learning and reading the Old Testament is extremely difficult but necessary. The question is, why is it necessary and how does it apply to me? We're going to look at 1 Corinthians 10:11. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us on whom the culmination of the age has come. Matthew 5:17, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Hebrews 1 through 2. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. In Hebrews 13:8, God does not change. 1 Corinthians 10:11. Things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. The Old Testament shows us the realistic side of our lives. The same things they went through then applies to us today. Real grief, anger, doubt, and rebellion. It exposes fundamental truths about our human character that remain completely unchanged present day. The Old Testament shows us humans all of our weaknesses across time so that when Jesus finally arrives, we realize just how desperately we need him. Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. The old covenant is the foundation. The new covenant is the building. You don't tear down the foundation of a house just because you finish framing the second floor. The Old Testament provides us with the vocabulary of salvation, such as sin, holiness, sacrifice, redemption, atonement, mediator, and priest. Also, again, some of the fundamental teachings we need to understand, like Passover and the high priest, the purpose of the high priest. It helps us when we're going through life's difficulties and we don't understand why. When you feel overwhelmed, David's Psalms gives you a language for prayer. When you are wrestling with suffering, Job shows you that God can handle your hard questions. When you feel like a failure, Abraham, Sarah, and Peter prove that God works through messy, imperfect people. Hebrews 1:1. In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, He has spoken to us by His Son. We often feel like God sounds harsh, loud, and distant when we read the Old Testament, but we feel that Jesus is soft spoken and approachable. We feel that God will punish us, but Jesus is more understanding and forgiving. In the Old Testament, God spoke through representatives, prophets, but in the New Covenant, God didn't send a messenger, He came Himself. And last, Hebrews 13:8. God does not change. The Old Testament shows God's mercy, patience, and love over and over again. God defines Himself first as compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love. Jesus Himself spoke clearly about judgment and hell. God's holiness and love exist in both testaments. God's patience with stubborn, failing people throughout the Old Testament is the exact same patience He has with us today. In conclusion, The Old Testament was written for us to reveal who God is and to show us who we are and how desperately we all need Jesus. It, it exposes our fundamental truths about our human character, truths that remain completely unchanged today. Thank you.